Shalom, shalom, everybody. It's your boy Shallow, man. It's the business. It's the business. We up in here with law number 40 of the 48 laws of power. Moving right along. All right. Despise the free lunch. Despise the free lunch. What is offered for free is dangerous. It usually involves either a trick or a hidden obligation. What has worth is worth paying for. By paying your own way, you stay clear of gratitude, guilt, and deceit. It is always, there is no cutting corners with excellence. Despise the free lunch. All right. Money and power. Money and power. Money and power. In the by its cost. And everything has a price. What is offered for free or at bargain rates often comes with a psychological price tag, complicated feelings of obligation, compromises with quality, and the insecurity those compromises bring, on and on. The powerful learn early to protect their most valuable resources, independence, and room to maneuver. By paying the full price, they keep themselves free of dangerous entanglements and worries. Floyd Mayweather was just talking about that not too long ago. About how you pay full price for everything. You don't want nobody to give them nothing for free. You want to pay for it, so you don't feel like you're obligated to them. Being open and flexible with money also teaches the value of strategic generosity, a variation on the old trick of giving when you are about to take. By giving the appropriate gift, you put the recipient under obligation. Generosity softens people up to be deceived. By gaining a reputation for liberality, you win people's admiration while distracting them from your power plays. By strategically spreading your wealth, you charm the other courtiers, creating pleasure and making valuable allies. Look at the masters of power, the Caesars, the Queen Elizabeths, the Michelangelos, the Medicis. Not a misery among them, not a miser among them. Even the great con artists spend freely to swindle. Even the great con artists spend freely to swindle. Tight purse strings are unattractive when engaged in seduction. Casanova would give completely not only of himself, but of his wallet. The powerful understanding that money is psychologically charged, and that it is also a vessel of politeness and sociability. They make the human side of money a weapon in their armory. For everyone able to play with money, thousands more are locked in a self-destructive refusal to use money creatively and strategically. These types represent the opposite pole to the powerful, and you must learn to recognize them, either to avoid their poisonous natures or to turn their inflexibility to your advantage. The greedy fish. The greedy fish take the human side out of money. Cold and ruthless. They alienate valuable allies. No one wants to work with greedy fish. And over the years, they end up isolated which often proves their undoing. Greedy fish are the con artist's bread and butter. Lured by the bait of easy money, they swallow valuable time digging for bargains. They worry endlessly about what they could have gotten elsewhere for a little less. On the top of that, the bargain item that they do buy is often shabby. Perhaps it needs costly repairs or will have to be replaced twice as fast as a high quality item. The cost of these pursuits, not always in money, through the price of a bargain is often deceptive, but in time and peace of mind, discourage normal people from undertaking. But the bargain demon, the bargain, excuse me, but for the bargain demon, the bargain is an end in itself. These type might seem to harm only themselves, but their attitudes are contagious. Unless you resist them, they will infect you with the insecure feeling that you should have looked harder to find the cheaper price. Don't argue with them or try to change them. Just mentally add up the cost in time and inner peace, if not in hidden finance expenses of the irritational pursuit of the bargain. The sadists. Financial sadists play vicious power games with money as a way of asserting their power. They might, for example, make you wait for money that is owed you, promising you that the check is in the mail. Or if they hire you to work for them, they meddle in every aspect of the job, haggling and giving you ulcers. Sadists seem to think that paying for something gives them the right to torture and abuse the seller. They have no sense of the courtier element in money. If you are unlucky enough to get involved with this type, accepting a financial loss may be better in the long run than getting entangled in their destructive power games. Come here. Come here. Come here, man. The indiscriminate giver. Generosity has a definite function. If you want some water, yeah. There you go. You can have it, all right. Indiscriminate givers, on the other hand, are generous because they want to be loved and admired by all. And their generosity is so indiscriminate and needy that it might not have the desired effect. If they give to one and all, why should the recipient feel special? Attractive as it may seem to make an indiscriminate giver your mark. In any involvement with this type, you will often feel burdened by the insatiable emotional needs. Transgression of the law. Transgression number 1. After Francesco Pizarro conquered Peru in 1532, gold from the Incan Empire began to pour into Spain, and Spaniards of all classes started dreaming of the instant riches to be had in the New World. That's mine. You drink your water. The story soon spread of the Indian chief to the east of Peru, who once each year would ritually cover himself in gold dust and dive into a lake. Soon word of mouth transformed El Dorado, the Golden Man, into the empire called El Dorado, wealthier than the Incan, where the streets were paved and the buildings inlaid with gold. This elaboration of the story did not seem implausible, for surely a chief who could afford to waste gold dust in a lake would rule a golden empire. Soon Spaniards were searching for El Dorado all over northern South America. In February of 1541, the largest expedition yet in this venture, led by Pizarro's brother Gonzalo, left Quito in Ecuador. Resplendent. 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 Let's see. Resplendent. Shalom, Daniel. resplendent, brightly glowing with light or color. Resplendent in their armors and colorful skills. Brightly glowing in their armor and colorful skills. Brightly glowing with light or brightly glowing with color. Brightly glowing with light or resplendent in their armor and colorful skills. 340 Spaniards headed east, along with 4,000 Indians to carry supplies and serve as scouts. 4,000 swines, dozens of llamas, and close to 1,000 dogs. But the expedition was soon hit with torrential rain, which rotted its gear and spoiled its food. Meanwhile, as Gonzalo Pizarro questioned the Indians they met along the way, those who seemed to be withholding information or who had not even heard of the fabulous kingdom, he would torture and feed to the dogs. Damn, Pizarro. Word of the Spaniards' murderousness spread quickly among the Indians, who realized that the only way to avoid Gonzalo's wrath was to make up stories about El Dorado and send him as far away as possible. As Gonzalo and his men followed the leads the Indians gave them, then they were only led farther into deep jungle. The explorer spirit sagged. Their uniforms had long since shredded, their armor rusted, and they threw it away. Their shoes were torn to pieces, forcing them to walk barefoot. The Indians that should show you something right about. That should show you something. They ended up eating everything. Pizarro decided to risk river travel. Excuse me. They lived on roots and fruits. Realizing that they could not continue this way, Pizarro decided to risk river travel, and a barge was built on out of rotting wood. But the journey down the treacherous Napa River proved no easier. Setting up camp on the river's edge, Gonzalo sent scouts ahead on the barge to find Indian settlements with food. He waited and waited for the scouts to return, only to find out they had decided to desert the expedition and continue down the river on their own. The rain continued without end. Gonzalo's men forgot about El Dorado. They wanted only to return to Quito. Finally, in August of 1542, a little over 100 men from an expedition originally numbered in the thousands managed to find their way back. To the residents of Quito, they seemed to have emerged from hell itself, wrapped in tatters and skins, their bodies covered in sores and so emaciated as to be unrecognizable. For over a year and a half, they had marched. For over a year and a half. They had marched in an enormous circle, 2,000 miles by foot. Man. The vast sums of money invested in the expedition had yielded nothing. No sign of El Dorado and no sign of gold. Interpretation. Even after Gonzalo Pizarro's disaster, the Spaniards launched expedition after expedition in search of El Dorado. And like Pizarro, the conquistador would burn and loot villages, torture Indians, endure imaginable hardships, and get no closer to gold. The money they spent on such expeditions could not be calculated. Yet, despite the futility of the search, the lure of the fantasy endured. Not only did the search for El Dorado cost millions of lives, both Indians and Spanish, it helped bring the ruin of the Spanish Empire. Gold became Spain's obsession. The gold that did find its way back to Spain, and a lot did, was reinvested in more expeditions or in the purchase of luxuries rather than in agriculture or in any other productive endeavor. Whole Spanish towns were depopulated as their menfolk left to hunt gold. Farms fell to ruin, and the army had no recruits for the European war. By the end of the 17th century, the entire country had shrunk by more than half of its population. Now, all searching for gold, all searching for that. Of the 17th century, the entire country had shrunk by more than half of its population. The city of Madrid had gone from a population of 400,000 to 150,000. With diminishing returns from its efforts over the many years, Spain fell into a decline from which it never recovered. Power requires self-discipline. Power requires self-discipline. The prospect of wealth, particularly believe that more is always possible. The free lunch, the money that will fall into your lap, is just around the corner. In this delusion, the greedy neglect everything power really depends on: self-control, the goodwill of others, and so on. Understand, with one exception, death. No lasting change in fortune comes quickly. Sudden wealth rarely lasts. Sudden wealth rarely lasts, for it is built on nothing solid. Never let lust for money lure you out of the protective and enduring fortress of real power. Never let lust for money lure you out of the protective and enduring fortress of real power. Make power your goal, and money will find its way to you. Leave El Dorado for suckers and fools. Transgression number 2. In the early 18th century, no one stood higher in English society than the Duke and Duchess of Marlborough. The Duke, having led successful campaigns against the French, was considered Europe's premier general and strategist. And his wife, the Duchess, after much maneuvering, had established herself as the favorite of Queen Anne, who became ruler of England in 1702. In 1704, the Duke's triumph in the Battle of Blenheim, made him the toast of England. And to honor him, the Queen awarded him a large plot of land in the town of Woodstock, on the founds to create a great palace there, calling his planned home the Palace of Blenheim. The Duke chose as his architect the young John Van Brugh, a kind of Renaissance man who wrote plays as well as designed buildings. And so construction began in the summer of 1705 with much fanfare and great hopes. Van Brugh had a dramatist's sense of architecture. His palace was to be a monument of Marlborough's brilliance and power, and was to include artificial lakes, enormous bridges, elaborate gardens, and other fantastical touches. From day one, however, the Duchess could not be pleased. She thought Blenheim was wasting money on yet another stand of trees. She wanted the palace finished as soon as possible. The Duchess tortured Van Brugh and his workmen on every detail. She was consumed with petty matters. Although the government was paying for Blenheim, and she counted every penny. Eventually, her grumbling about Blenheim and other things too created an irreparable rift between her and Queen Anne, who in 1711 dismissed her from the court, ordering her to vacate her apartments at the royal palace. When the Duchess left, fuming over the loss of her position and also of her royal salary, she emptied the apartment of every fixture down to the brass doorknobs. Spiteful. Spiteful. Over the next 10 years, work on Blenheim would stop and start as the funds became harder to produce from the government. The Duchess Through Weinberg, the Duchess, though Weinberg was out to ruin, the Duchess thought Weinberg was out to ruin her. She quibbled over every carload of stone and bushel of lime, counted every extra yard of iron railing or foot of wainscot, hurling abuse at the wasteful workmen, contractors, and surveyors. Marlborough, old and weary, wanted nothing more than to settle into the palace in his last years, but the project became bogged down in the swamp of litigation. The workmen suing the Duchess for wages, the Duchess suing the architect right back. In the midst of the interminable wrangling, the Duke died. He had never spent a night in the beloved Blenheim. Man, he couldn't keep a damn mouth shut. She couldn't keep a damn mouth shut. But he should have controlled her. After Marlborough's death, it became clear that he had a vast estate worth over, man, I don't know that symbol means. It looks like a little L. Like a little L with 2 million. What would I look for? Let me see. Money. M-O-N-E-Y. Money symbols of money. Symbols of money. Let's see. Symbols of money. Money symbols. Money symbols. Money symbols. Symbols and signs. All right, here we go. Yeah. Currencies. Well, it's a pounds. Pounds. Yeah, equals pounds. Pounds. Right. As a symbol. Like that. Pounds. That's a symbol. 2 million pounds. 2 million pounds. After Marlborough's death, it became clear that he had a vast estate worth over 2 million pounds, more than enough to pay for finishing the palace. But the Duchess would not relent. She held back Van Brewer's wages as well as the workmen's, and finally had the architect dismissed. The man who took his place finished Blenheim in a few years, following Van Buren's design to the letter. Van Buren died in 1726, locked out of the palace by the Duchess, unable to set foot in his greatest creation, foreshadowing the Romantic movement. Blenheim had started a whole new trend in architecture, but had given its creator a 20-year nightmare. Interpretation. For the Duchess of Marlborough, money was a way to play sadistic power games. She saw the loss of money as a symbolic loss of power. With Vanbrugh, her contortions went deeper still. He was a great artist, and she envied his power to create, to attain a fame outside of her reach. She may not have had his gifts, but she did have the money to torture and abuse him over the pettiest details, to ruin his life. And this kind of sadism, however, bears an awful price. It made construction that should have lasted 10 years take 20. It poisoned many a relation, alienated the Duchess from the court, deeply pained the Duke, who wanted only to live peacefully in Belheim. What's up? Hmm? The water, right? You can take some of that water. It poisoned many a relationship, alienated the Duchess from the court, deeply pained the Duke, who wanted only to live peacefully in Belheim, created endless lawsuits, and took years off Vanbrugh's life. Ooh-wee. Oh, man. All the way to the beginning. This kind of sadism, however, bears an awful price. It made construction that should have lasted 10 years take 20. It poisoned many a relationship, alienated the Duchess from the court, deeply pained the Duke, who wanted only to live peacefully in Blenheim, created endless lawsuits, and took years off Brenheim's life, or Vanbrugh's life. Finally, to posterity. They're alone. Finally, posterity had the last word. Vanbrugh is recognized as a genius, while the Duchess is forever remembered for her consummate cheapness. Vanbrugh is recognized as a genius, while the Duchess is forever remembered for her consummate cheapness. The powerful must have grandeur of spirit. They can never reveal any pettiness, and money is the most visible arena in which to display either grandeur or pettiness. Best spend freely, then, and create a reputation for generosity, which in the end will pay great dividends. Never let financial details blind you to the bigger picture of how people perceive you. Their resentment will cost you in the long run. And if you want to meddle in the work and creative people under your hire, at least pay them well. Your money will buy their submission better than your displays of power. Observance of the law. Observance 1. I know that's what you want. Observance 1. What's up, Mama? That's fine. Observance number 1. Okay. Pietro Artino, son of the lowly shoemaker, had catapulted himself into fame as a writer of biting satires. But like every Renaissance artist, he needed to find a patron who would give him a comfortable lifestyle while not interfering with his work. C is for cat. That's C. C is for cat. Hey, take that in another room, DJ, if you want to do that. You can look at that. That's fine. Just take it in another room, all right? That's fine. He needed to find a patron who would give him a comfortable lifestyle while not interfering with his work. Pietro Artino, son of the lowly shoemaker, had catapulted himself into fame as a writer of biting satires. But like every Renaissance artist, he needed to find a patron who would give him a comfortable lifestyle while not interfering with his works. In 1528, Artino decided to attempt a new strategy in the patron game. Leaving Rome, he established himself in Venice, where few had heard of him. He had a fair amount of money. He had a fair amount of money. He had managed to save, but little else. Soon after he moved into his new home, however, he threw open its doors to rich and poor, regaling them with banquets and amusements. He befriended each and every gondola, Gondolier, Gondola. Gondola. A roar, a gondola, gondolier, a roller of a gondola, I know that. A graceful, narrow flat-bottomed boat propelled by a single oar at the stern. A car suspended from a dirigible or balloon. A gondola. An open rail car. I know that's a boat. A graceful, narrow, flat-bottomed boat propelled by a single oar at the stern. A gondolier. He befriended each and every gondolier, tipping them royally. In the streets, he spread his money liberally, giving it away to beggars, orphans, washerwomen. Among the city's commoners, word quickly spread that Artino was more than just a writer. He was a man of power, a kind of lord. Artists and men of influence soon began to frequent Artino's house. Within a few years, he made himself a celebrity. No visiting dignitaries, but name, a cornerstone in the foundation of power. Since in Renaissance Italy, as elsewhere, the ability to spend freely was the privilege of the rich. The aristocracy thought Artino had to be a man of influence, since he spent money like one. And since the influence of a man of influence is worth buying, Artino became the recipient of all sorts of gifts and monies. Dukes and duchesses, wealthy merchants, and popes and princes competing to gain his favor and showered him with all kinds of presents. DJ, put it down. Put my drill down. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Hey, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? You need to, hey, bring it right here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Hey, when I tell you to do something, come here. When I tell you to do something, man, I don't want to hear no. You do what I tell you to do. Look at me. You understand? Yeah. You understand? Do you understand? Look at me. What's going on? What's going on? Man, now listen, that's what's going on. Man telling me no, that's what's going on. You don't tell me no. You understand? Don't worry. I'll give y'all another pizza once I'm done. Yes, sir. Another.
A pizza or apple? Oh.
All right. Excuse me.
Man wants him to eat.
He'll get another pizza once it's done. Once it's done.
A pizza, man.
You gotta wait till I'm finished reading.
Oh. I think man just want a pizza. Man want a pizza. Man wants him to eat.
There you go. Artino, hey, calm down. I heard you. Calm down. Y'all already had a pizza. You'll get another one after I'm done reading. Calm down. Now you can sit in here and listen. I don't mind. You can sit right there and listen. But you have to be quiet.
I didn't read my book.
Well, go read your book. Daddy reading his book. All right. Better leave my drills alone. I know that. All right. My bad. Artino's spending habits, of course, were strategic, and the strategy worked like a charm. But for real money and comfort, he needed a great patron's bottomless pockets. Having surveyed the possibilities, he eventually set his sights on the extremely wealthy Marquis of Mantua. Power, easily wage. He might dedicate a poem in indebtedness. This man's indebtedness too. And he in turn would help Artino when he could. The circle of influence was growing wider. Time and again, Artino was able to cash in on the immense political power of the Marquis, who also helped him in his many court romances. Eventually, however, the relationship became strained as Artino came to feel that the Marquis should have requited his generosity better, but he would not lower himself to begging or whining. Since the exchange of gifts between the two men had made them equals, it would not seem right to bring up money. He simply withdrew from the Marques's circle and hunted for other wealthy prey, settling first on the French King Francis, then the Medicis, the Duke of Urbino, Emperor Charles V, and more. In the end, having many patrons meant he did not have to bow to any of them, and his power seemed comparable to that of a great lord. Interpretation. Artino understood two fundamental properties of money. First, that it has to circulate to bring power. First, it has to circulate to bring power. What money should buy is not lifeless objects, but power over people. First, that it has to circulate to bring power. I think that's a strong, it has to circulate. What money should buy is not lifeless objects, but power over people. By keeping money in constant circulation, Artino bought an ever-expanding circle of influence that in the end more than compensated him for his expenses. Second, Artino understood the key property of the gift. To give a gift is to imply that you are a recipient, you and the recipient are equals at the very least, or that you and the recipient's superior, or you are the recipient superior, my bad. Second, Artino understood the key property of the gift. To give a gift is to imply that you and the recipient are equals at the very least, or that you are the recipient's superior. A gift also involves an indebtedness or obligation. A gift also involves an indebtedness or obligation. I'm gonna highlight that one. Highlight that. When friends, for instance, offer you something for free, you can be sure they expect something in return. And that to get it, they are making you feel indebted. The mechanism may or may not be entirely conscious on their part, but this is how it works. Artino avoided such encumbrances on his freedom. Instead of acting like a menial who expects the powerful to pay his way in life, he turned the whole dynamic around. Instead of being indebted to the powerful, he made the powerful indebted to him. This was the point of his gift giving. Mom, I'm gonna call you back. You all right? Huh? Yes, ma'am. All right. When the man, when friends, for instance, offer you something for free, you can be sure they expect something in return, and that to get it, they are making you feel indebted. The mechanism may or may not be entirely conscious on their part, but this is how it works. Artino avoided such encumbrances on his freedom. Instead of acting like a menial who expects the powerful to pay his way in life, he turned the whole dynamic around. Instead of being indebted to the powerful, he made the powerful indebted to him. This was the point of his gift giving, a ladder that carried him to the highest social levels. By the end of his life, he had become the most famous writer in Europe. Understand, money may determine powerful relationships, but those relationships need not depend on the amount of money you have. They also depend on the way you use it. Powerful people give freely, buying influence rather than things. If you accept the inferior position because you have no fortune yet, you may find yourself in it forever. Play the trick that Artino played on Italy's aristocracy. Imagine yourself an equal. Play the Lord. Give freely. Open your doors, circulate your money, and create the facet of power through an alchemy that transforms money into influence. Observance number 2. Ooh. Yeah, this is a long chapter, man. I mean, this is a long law. We're almost there, though. 3 pages. 3 more pages. Observance 2. Soon after Baron James Rothschild made his fortune in Paris in the early 1820s, he faced his most intractable problem. How could a Jew and a German, a total outsider to French society, win the respect of the xenophobic French upper classes? Xenophobic, let's see what it is. Xenophobic. 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 Oh, that's awesome. Xenophobia. X-ray, Xmas. I think it's xenophobia. Xenophobia. Fear or dislike of strangers or foreigners. Win the respect of the dislike, those who fear strangers or foreigners, those who dislike foreigners, within the French upper classes, the xenophobic,